Now, he went on, let us recall another of your embodiments, one that you had in Egypt. We rose from the earth, and moved rapidly forward. I was very conscious of the Mediterranean, as we passed over its beautiful waters. We went on to Karnak and Luxor, then again came into contact with the earth. Watch closely, he said. This record is of a very ancient temple in Luxor, not among those whose ruins the archaeologists are exploring today, but one antedating any that have been discovered so far. If they knew where to look, they would find magnificent temples in a state of almost perfect preservation. Indicating a certain spot filled with ruins, which is all that travelers can see today, the scene became replaced by the activity in the ether, as it had originally been in all its beauty and splendor, far more magnificent than anything of which the present generation has any concept. The gardens and pools were surrounded by great pillars of white marble and rose granite. The entire locality became living, real, vibrant, and just as tangible as any physical city on earth today. It was so perfectly natural and normal that I asked how he made these experiences so vivid. Man and his creations, he replied, as well as nature, have an etheric counterpart, a pattern which makes its eternal impression upon the atmosphere about him wherever he goes. The pattern of the individual's activity and life experiences within his own aura all the time. A similar record exists in the aura of every locality. An ascended master may, if he choose, revivify or reclothe the individual's record of former activities wherever that person happens to be, for the pattern upon which the master coalesces the atomic structure is always in the aura of that individual. When the master reclothes the record of a locality, he must do it in the same specific place, for such a record, when reclothed, becomes the same living form and structure that it was when first built in physical substance. In this way, it is possible to coalesce again the physical structure of entire buildings and their surroundings, when the ascended master so desires, for the accomplishment of some good purpose. When one has attained this God-given dominion, he can and does reclothe and reanimate any etheric record he desires to make visible for the instruction and benefit of students and others. When he does this, it is as real as reality itself, and the reclothed objects can be photographed, handled, and made physically tangible to the physical senses of the one observing them. Notice, he reminded me, you are experiencing these activities in your finer body, but they are none the less real because of that, for your physical body is only a garment which you, the self-conscious, thinking, and experiencing individual, wear. It is the same as though you wore a heavy overcoat in the cold winter atmosphere and only a light suit of clothes on a very warm summer day. Experiences in your light suit of clothes would surely be no less real than those you lived through in your heavy overcoat. I call this to your attention, that you may understand the fuller and less limited activities of life. We examined the grounds, the surrounding country, and architecture. Come, let us enter, he said, and as he spoke, stepped forward and passed through the main entrance into the temple itself. We then became living actors and at the same time observers of the following experience. We passed into the main part of the temple, and proceeded toward the inner sanctuary. The high priest came directly up to us, and seemed to know me. This priest of ancient days, Saint Germain explained, is now your son. A lesser priest appeared whom I immediately felt I knew, and he remarked, the assisting priest was yourself. We entered the inner sanctuary and saw the Vestal Virgin guarding the sacred fire. She, whom I now beheld, was Lotus, my beloved twin ray, whom I met and married some years ago and who is the mother of our son. The scene changed and we saw a visiting prince from a distant province plan to seize the Vestal Virgin for his bride. All seemed to go well, until the high priest was shown a vision of what was about to take place. It disturbed him, but he kept his own counsel. Standing guard as the slaves of the prince entered, he watched them approach the sanctuary. As they came nearer, he stepped forward and spoke but one word, that meant, "Stop!" One slave, bolder than the rest, came on. The high priest warned him back, but still he came nearer. When he reached a certain sacred circle of force which emanated from the altar, the priest no longer hesitated. He stepped to the outer edge of that protecting radiance, raised his right hand, and pointed directly at the slave. A flash of flame shot forth like lightning and the slave fell lifeless to the floor. The prince, who was watching, came forward in an insane rage. "Stop!" commanded the priest again in a voice like a clap of thunder. The prince hesitated for a moment, stunned by the very power of the word, and the priest continued. "Listen to me. You shall not desecrate the highest of God's gifts to the temple of life. Begone! Before you follow the example of your too brazen and misdirected slave." The high priest was fully conscious of the power he could wield, and as he stood watching the prince, Lai was the very embodiment of self-control of illimitable force, consciously held in obedience to his will. He was majesty crowned with eternal power. The will of the prince was powerful also, but he had no control over himself, and, as another wave of blind rage swept over him, when he found himself again opposed, and giving full vent to lust, he rushed forward. The priest, quick as a flash, raised his hand. The flame flashed out a second time, and the prince followed the fate of his former slave. Saint Germain turned to me, and explained the experience still further. "You see," he began, "that is the way the quality within every force reacts upon the one who sends it out. The prince and his slave came with the qualities of hate, selfishness, and depravity within their feelings, and, when the priest directed the force, of which he was the master, toward them, it took on their qualities the moment it touched their auras. He merely turned their own feelings and selfishness back upon themselves. The priest, in his unselfish effort to protect another, was himself also protected. That incident closed, the scene of splendor vanished, and again we stood amidst the temple ruins. Saint Germain revealed still more to me, which may not be recorded here.